Hey, I'm Peter, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, Waking from the Fire. I want to start by asking 3 questions. Number 1, have you ever been on a diet? Number 2, have you ever lost weight on a diet? And number 3, have you gained weight back? Well, if you answered yes, you're in the right place, and you're not alone. I've been asking that question for 30 years to my patients, clients, and audience, and 80 to 90% raise their hand when I ask that question. So, what's wrong with us? Absolutely nothing. During this podcast, I'm going to dig deeper. I'm going to look at questions like that. How can we all be on diets, lose weight, and then gain it back? What is really going on? We're going to go where most people don't go. I'll tell you this, the people that are doing what we're going to be doing together are getting incredible results for themselves and for their audience and their patients and their clients. We're going to look at childhood. Not to blame and not to dwell, not to point fingers, but to understand. I have learned on this journey of 30 years that it's not enough for me to have the knowledge of how to eat, how to exercise, stress strategies, spirituality, any strategies that I have, cooking, preparing food, shopping, all of the health knowledge that I have amassed as a nutritionist, physical therapist, masters of science, without the understanding of what motivates us and what saps our motivation, then we're destined to be on that treadmill. Now, you know this person. You might know them personally. All week they starve themselves and they kill themselves with exercise. On the weekend, they let themselves cheat and they go a little too crazy. And on Monday morning, they're back on the treadmill, so to speak. Now, that's the definition of insanity, to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, right? So if you want to break free from that, I want you to join me as I have guests on, as I share my experience, as we explore, as I share with you the latest research and science that looks at what is currently the most or the best information that we have on nutrition, on exercise, on spirituality, on meditation, on cooking. You name it, we're going to explore it if it has to do with a health resource. But like I said, we're going to go right to the core. What's holding us back? What is stopping us from living that fulfilling life, from carrying out that vision that we have had maybe for years? Maybe it's just something that's coming up. I want to explore that with you. So I'm going to weave in the last 4 years of the work that I've been doing with a therapist, with a 12-step program, and journaling that has led to writing a memoir. I never intended on writing a 90,000-word memoir. When my daughter said, "Hey, Dad, why don't you write a memoir?" when I told her about the work that I was doing, looking at my childhood, I said, "Honey, are you crazy? Do you know how much work it is to remember all that? Like, who could do that? I would never want to do it." And 4 years later, here I am with a 90,000-word memoir. The incredible thing that the memoir did for me is it gave me many, many gifts. One of them was a look back into the room at the exact moment when my father and my mother embedded within me their worst parts. Now, I'm not blaming them. I'm just identifying where my self-doubt, my judgment, my rage at times, my hate, my loathing, my laziness came from, because I hated those parts of myself. But until I did this work, I didn't understand. And only doing this work could I have come to that, because I have been to seminars. I love Tony Robbins. I've read Eckhart Tolle. I have been and read and looked up and researched so much of psychology because I'm fascinated about it for myself, right? I thought I was crazy, so I wanted to fix myself. And the thing that I didn't find in any of that was the source of my low self-worth. Now, think about that. As a physical therapist, someone comes into me with knee pain and I put ice on that knee. What am I doing? I'm treating the symptom. Swelling is the symptom of a knee problem. And that wouldn't benefit my patient if I did that. What do I want to do for that patient? I want to go to the core. What is the core? What is causing the inflammation? And the only way to do that is to have a conversation with that person and to listen and to be quiet and to understand and then come up with a strategy to fix what's causing the knee pain. We're going to do the same thing on this podcast. That's why I want to weave in my memoir, because it's been so enlightening for me. And the people that I've shared it with have said, hey, Peter, like strangers on Facebook, this is so, every time it happens, I'm just so surprised. A stranger will message me privately on Facebook and say, I read an excerpt, and though we had different childhoods, I feel the exact same way. So let me start by reading you my author's introduction to my memoir, Waking from the Fire. Since the fire, something's wrong. Truthfully, something's always been wrong. Strangely, I never connected it to my childhood. I didn't think about the fire, like it never happened. I thought the problem was me, some inherent flaw, a shortcoming. From consciousness, I don't matter. Not that anyone says those words exactly. I just sense it. Growing up, I feel like I don't belong, that people don't really like me. So I'm surprised my coworker writes on my 50th birthday card, "You're the best person I know." Believing I've tricked her, uncomfortable, I say, "We have the best employees anywhere," which I believe, deflecting attention from myself. I act caring and confident with my clients, patients, and friends, then judge myself for doing it so they like me rather than wanting to help them. I hide from the owner and other authority figures behind a confident smile, making sure he hears me when I win over a patient with praise. I want him to think I'm special. Secretly, I'm worried he'll fire me because I'm not as good as I said I was in the interview. I feel this way in every area of my life, except in the bedroom. I don't know why. Years after the fire, while getting my master's degree in physical therapy, as I deftly slice away the skin of a corpse in gross anatomy class, I realize I've seen those tissues before. Only then they were charred. My father's burnt body slams back into my mind, resurrecting him from the grave, bringing with him generational pain, self-hate, and rage. That happens more as I near 50, the age my father decided he couldn't live anymore. I'm worried I'm doomed to suffer the same fate. My perfectionistic exterior, created to survive my family's violence, arrest, beatings, and suicide, starts to crumble. I had built a successful speaking career, working with companies around the world like Goldman Sachs, appeared on TV, created the perfect family, then lost it all. When my children beg, "Daddy, we know about the fire. Please, just tell us what happened," I'm lost. Exhausted, I can't take trying to fill this hole anymore, a hole I didn't know existed. When I confide in my wife, she says, maybe you should look for another therapist. When I do, he suggests a 12-step program. And in therapy and group meetings, I learn what happened. During childhood, I believed one person's words and actions. That creates self-doubt, fear, anger, hate, and judgment. The confounding part, I have no idea. Then I learn unexpressed grief can masquerade as depression, making one feel alone in a crowded room and hopeless. That feels familiar. Frank, my therapist, will be the first person to tell me, "Peter, what your mother, brother, sister, and you experienced was not normal." When I look at him blankly, he tries to help me understand. "Your father had to die so that you all could live." Paralyzed by self-doubt, I'm faced with a choice: repeat my family's generational dysfunction, destroying myself while hurting my children, like my father did, or allow myself to be the person I've always wanted to be, the person my children love. Unexpectedly, writing gives me a great gift: a look back into the rooms at the exact moments my father embeds within me his worst parts. Now, in each chapter, I search for them, then figure out how to heal them, to forgive my father and myself. Sharing excerpts on social media, I'm surprised when friends, clients, and strangers message me explaining, though we had different childhoods, I feel the same. Can we talk? That makes me think, how many others feel like I do? On Facebook, they look like they're having a great life too. Then, a problem appears during my writing that makes me want to delete it all. Enmeshed within what Frank calls my father's terrorizing behavior is a fiercely loving man. The man I remember as a child, sitting safely on his lap. Writing about that side of him reminds me it wasn't, like my older brother said, all bad. Initially, I resist including his good qualities because I think that will weaken the case I'm building against him, leaving me exposed as a depressed, pathetic, 50-year-old failure trying to blame it all on his dead dad. But I realized I have to be honest. Only telling part of the story will end up hurting me and my 3 children, the most important people in my life. So I include what made my father human, making him an even more tragic figure. Because in those moments he becomes vulnerable. I loved my father then and feel guilty for writing about him now. If you know my background, you know I have a nutrition degree, I have a master's of science degree in physical therapy. I've been a health speaker for 15 to 20 years. I'm not sure it all started. I'll share that as part of the podcast. It's a funny story how I started speaking, and the last thing I ever thought I would do would be a public speaker. So that's the other thing I want to talk about in Waking from the Fire. You know, often I'd see people on TV, on a podcast, appearing extremely successful, have tons of followers, have a big social media platform. Maybe they're a best-selling author or did something remarkable that makes them famous in some way. And when I looked to some of those people, the ones I wanted to learn from, they became mentors to me. And I started reading about their stories. I read about their own challenges, their own self-doubt, the moments in their life, like me, when they don't want to get out of bed in the morning, where they can't see a vision and a future, where they might feel hopeless. And that's what I want to share as I create this podcast and go forward. I always want to remind us that we're so much more alike than different. And one of the ways is that self-doubt. And one of the places that self-doubt comes from is childhood. Now, you don't have to have been abused per se. It doesn't have to be obvious abuse. Childhood trauma could be anything from abuse, physical or verbal, but it could be insidious. It could be as simple as a parent when they get your report card saying, "Is that the best you can do?" And it could be as simple as being abandoned, literally and figuratively, with a well-intentioned parent. Maybe a parent was stressed when you were born or when you were being raised, and that parent couldn't be 100% present. Like I wasn't always 100% present with my children. I love my children. I was there every night I could be. Often I'm the one that made dinner for them when my wife wasn't cooking. I played with them. I coached them in Little League. But there were moments when I was not present with my children, meaning I was there, but I was not present for them. And children can sense that, and that becomes abandonment, and that can lead into shame. And having that background, it's so, like I said, insidious because it's not obvious. My parents were always there. Peter, what are you talking about? My parents are still married. Oh, they bicker and they argue. I hear that story all the time. And they're well-meaning. And maybe they're upper middle class, these friends. But they feel the exact same way I do. Now, why is that? We grew up in completely different homes, yet we feel exactly the same. The same self-doubt, the same self-judgment, rage, anger, hate at times, all of these commonalities. That's what I want to explore in Waking from the Fire. And I'm also, because I can't help it, I'm going to share everything I know as a nutritionist about nutrition. as a master's of science in physical therapy, I'm going to share everything I know about exercise, about preventing pain, about ergonomics, about posture, about safety during physical activity, all of the stress strategies that I've come across for myself first. This is the incredible thing. I started on this journey. I first became a physical therapist after I dropped out of Rutgers University after quitting, walking away from a full football scholarship. I'll talk about that as well, because I haven't talked about that in 30 years. And it's a fascinating story. If it wasn't me, I'd say, wow, that's a fascinating story. But I'll talk about becoming a nutritionist and sharing all of those incredibly powerful strategies of nutrition. One of the best things you and I can do. Exercise, everything that I learned as an exercise scientist or learning exercise science as a physical therapist during my program. Incredible knowledge that has benefited me and my clients and my audience for many years. What I want to do though is dig deeper. I want to go to the source. Why can't you, and when I say you, I mean all of us, why can't we stick to a diet? Why can't we stick to a workout? Why can't we stick to a meditation practice? Whatever it is we set a goal for, why do we have difficulty doing it? And I hate, and I don't want to hear this from you, that I'm lazy. I don't want to hear that. I hear that from women who are single and are raising 2 and 3 children and work full time. You're going to tell me you're lazy? I'm not going to accept that respectfully. We're better than that. So what is it? What I found in my research is a lot of the reason why we are unhappy now, unfulfilled, not doing what we want to be doing, not living the vision of the life we have wanted or want. A lot of it goes back to childhood. So we're going to tap into that while we tap into the incredible resources we have of nutrition, exercise, stress strategy, spirituality, exploring the healthiest people in the world. I think it makes the most sense. If we want to get healthy, let's look at the healthiest people on the planet and what are they doing to be healthy. Doesn't that make sense? That just makes perfect sense to me. And the amazing thing about those people, and a lot of them live in places called blue zones. It's something that you can look up yourself, bluezones.org or .com. I'm not sure what it is. I love it because these people mostly are poor. They live in rural areas. They don't have much. A lot of them tend goats. They make their own bread. They carry their own water down from the creek or from the well. But they live the longest, happiest, healthiest lives. Now, to me, that is incredibly encouraging. I got to think about that, right? We have all this technology in the United States, and most of us have the resources to buy healthy food, maybe organic, and I know that's so expensive, right? We have the resources maybe to join a gym or buy fitness equipment, or we have the time to exercise in addition to being so busy working and shuffling our kids around between practices and doing everything else that we're doing. Yet these people who have very little as far as material, something maybe that in the Western world we would consider as successful, right? Success, a big house, cars, affluent community, gym memberships, whatever we ascribe to, I'll talk about myself, whatever I have ascribed to success in the past. They have none of that, yet they're happier, they're healthier, they live longer lives, they live more fulfilling lives. And besides eating great, being very active, they're very community-centered, they're very spiritual. They drink some type of fermented beverage every day, some type of a wine or beer that they make themselves most of the time with local ingredients. So there's no additives and fillers and preservatives and all that other stuff that we might be adding to our stuff or to this that's added to the food and drinks that we might be consuming. So I find that fascinating and encouraging because we don't really have to spend a lot of money. It's just a little bit of upfront time preparing these foods, buying these foods, getting into that mindset, creating our MOAB, I think it's called, either a MOAB, M-O-A-B, or MOAD. It's loosely a like-minded group of people. That's what my friends and family tables are all about. It's assembling like-minded people from every area of life, white, black, everything in between, every shade of color, every gender, every political persuasion, whatever. I love bringing people together to have authentic, genuine conversations with each other. I love seeing across from the table a white woman talking with a black man and vice versa, and everything in between. Straight, gay, transgender, whatever, it doesn't matter. And what I witness is when we sit at the table eating delicious, healthy food and drinking healthy drinks, those conversations are remarkable for their authenticity, genuineness, and we find out a lot of us have had the same experiences, right? Grew up in different homes, different countries, different ethnicities, different races, yet we have very similar experiences. That's incredible. How is that possible, right? Because we're all human beings, we're all connected. And by the end of those parties, those people walk away friends and some of them family. And I just think that's so incredibly encouraging as well, especially when if we watch the media, we're being split apart. We're being told certain things that are stressful, anxiety producing. It makes us feel out of control. And if we can stay connected to a really great like-minded group of people and feel accepted, feel heard, be able to express ourselves in a safe place, non-judgmental, and get support and feedback and validation, then we're all going to be happier. We're going to have better lives. It's going to benefit us and the children in our life and the people that we love and care about. So that's what Waking from the Fire is about, and so much more. I'm going to have guests. I'm going to be just speaking to you like I'm doing now about certain topics. And I really want to explore just about everything that's available to us to live a healthy, fulfilling, satisfying, successful, if you want to use that word, life. So stay tuned. I'm Peter. Until next time.